Hello and welcome to the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast, a proud member of the Marketing Podcast Network. Hope you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. It's Wednesday, 22nd of October, and I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rock star, but I have been a CMO, and on this podcast, with the help of a band of marketing chums, I share marketing street knowledge, which I hope will bring out the rockstar marketer in you. However, this week I'm going solo. Between Jeff doing his bit with jury duty and me travelling this week, we've not been able to hook up to record an episode, and I'm going to share some thoughts about keeping our humanness in AI. But first, I need to pay the bar tab, so I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back. After this word.
We'll be right back.
After this word. We'll be right back.
Hey marketers, Deborah Eckerling here.
And I'm Keith Smith, and we host the MPN Meta Marketing Show, which is not just another marketing podcast, but the marketing podcast about all the other marketing podcasts.
Podcasts are booming, right? We love them, and people actually listen. They don't scroll, they don't swipe, well, except maybe during the ad breaks.
But here's the secret. With the Marketing Podcast Network, your ads don't make people hit skip. We put your brand on shows that people actually want to hear.
That's right. We match your message with podcasts that make marketing nerds like us perk up and take notes, or at least nod knowingly, pretending they understand.
And don't worry, because we'll deliver your ad naturally. People might even think that we love your brand personally, which of course we totally do, unless it's a veggie smoothie, then maybe not.
If you want your brand heard without making listeners roll their eyes,
head to marketingpodcasts.net and catch marketing fans at work, rest and play. Seriously, your audience is already listening. Make sure they hear your brand and not our awkward jokes.
join the conversation, because good ads shouldn't just be tolerated, they should be enjoyed.
Yes!
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Today I'm kicking off with a simple analogy that might make it into one of my posts. I don't know about you, but I've not heard much about the Emdash before, probably since school, as I'm not a classically trained writer, until AI started using it and it became a tell for synthesized content. The irony of this is that despite its newfound fame, we humans are, of course, using the Emdash less for fear that we'll be labelled as robots. And I thought this might be a good analogy for those LinkedIn posts that get a lot of attention. In fact, it seems we're encouraged by the algorithm to create content that creates a reaction, but do they actually convert into commercial engagement? The Emdash is scoring well on the vanity metrics and it's finding its fans, but all this attention is not converting to adoption. And speaking of appearing real, as expunging the Emdash from our day-to-day writing, on his This Old Marketing podcast the other day, my chum Robert quoted the original Blade Runner and a scene where the character Deckard asked the replicant Zora, "Is this a real snake?" And she replies, "Of course it's not real. You think I would be working in a place like this if I could afford a real snake?" He used this film quote to support a prediction that human creativity would be seen as a premium. And while his reference is science fiction, it seems that this is supported by behavioural psychology. Aside from This Old Marketing, one of my favourite podcasts is Nudge by Phil Agnew, which talks about behavioural psychology in marketing. And he recently shared some research into people's reactions to AI-generated art, which asked people to indicate a preference between something generated by a human and one generated by AI. As you can probably guess, the study found, and I'm summarising wildly here, and I'll include links to the sources in the show notes, that we prefer our art to be done by humans. To the point that the research found that people tend to rate artworks labelled human-created more positively than those labelled AI-created, even though they were the same images. So however good the robots get, if we can tell, we will prefer human creativity. The challenge, of course, will be the "if we can tell" in that previous sentence, as these things improve. Art is an obvious example, but I think eroding the trust in whether something is created by a human does have its implications in marketing. I'm starting to believe that any cold calling email in my inbox is no longer from a hard-working, wet behind the ears business development person putting in the hard work, trying their best to personalize their outreach and probably stumbling while doing so. An activity that, as a marketer, I can empathize with. In the past, that empathy has driven me to reply and give feedback that they were a little off with the targeting or whatever small faux pas they committed in the email. Now it's easy to believe that it's a robot that's pulling the content from my podcast or LinkedIn profile to make the same crass introductory, do you come here often, I love your work bollocks, delivered at scale without the endearing quality of a real person making a cock of themselves. If you got your robot to write this, then why should I care? I'm sure my inbox robot will file this appropriately. And when referring to this humanness of this interaction, I've used the analogy of the Julia Roberts line from Notting Hill. Just a girl standing in front of a boy asking you to love her. Seth Godin described what we're saying to the world a decade ago as here, I made this. 4 words that carry generosity, intent, risk, and intimacy with them. The things that AI, especially used indiscriminately, lacks. This offering of a seller's vulnerability pulls at the emotions of buyers. An exchange of empathy, I suspect, that behavioral psychology has some research into this, and it's probably related to reciprocation. If you've taken the time to put effort into this communication, maybe the potential buyer will feel drawn to respond. Pulling at this thread of cold emails, of course, our marketing machines have been enabling us to do very poor marketing at scale long before the hype of AI, email sequencing being the primary sinner. The sort of email sequencing I'm referring to are those that assume you read the last email. And we all know that open is not the same as read, especially in these days. It's a tricky signal to be certain about. And then that opening this email is an indication you've moved forward in their buying journey. So if someone opens the wrong message in the sequence, the messaging is not relevant to where the recipient really is in their buying journey, not the vendor's. And it's annoying and it's ignored until the final sequence says, much to the recipient's relief, this is the last email I'm sending on this. Of course, there is a place for good email marketing that's based on good data and signals, but broadly, I think there is a lot to be said for just being in someone's inbox. That seems to be enough, so that at some point, when they are in the market for your product or service, they'll recall your offer and search their inbox for it. So the best tactic, like all content marketing, is to share something useful and leave the cold, hard selling to when they put their hand up. Anyway, I've digressed a bit from my broadly AI-focused topic for this week. But the reason why I bring up sequencing and why I think it's kind of a flawed technique sometimes, aside from the fact that you shouldn't give marketers technology as we can't be trusted with nice things, it seems email sequences or increasingly LinkedIn messaging sequences are the core activity of this new crop of AI-powered business development tools that claim to replace human SDRs. I'm not being an AI Luddite. It just feels to me like they are built on a flawed premise. So maybe sequencing is not the right use case. We risk just pissing off more people at scale, which we also touched on in the last episode of The Rose and Rockstar, where me and Robert talked about personalization, as some recent Gartner research has revealed that 45% of your consumers find it creepy. I'm not going to repeat what we discussed there, but one of the interesting things I did discover, as it seemed to me that the Gartner research was reminiscent of how people felt about personalization back when this stuff hit the mainstream 2 decades ago, was that yes, people did find personalization creepy back then. But also, a HBR article I unearthed from 2001 described the magic behind it as AI. Back then, the AI that vendors claimed was pretty much just a fancy rules engine. Today, of course, the robots are in a different league. And I think if me and Robert had more time, we might have explored how AI actually could deliver on the personalization promise. That it seems real life implementations over the last 25 years have pretty much failed to deliver. Today, I suspect we are not far from a TikTok algorithm for B2B marketers cracking the challenge of matchmaking content to what we know about our audience based on their behavior without all the dull, heavy lifting of tagging our content, the semantic web, taxonomies, and all that information management stuff. In fact, I recently came across a startup that made bold claims about building a bespoke website experience for every visitor. Claims that have been made before, and I suspect if we just trust the machines, it will also have its challenges. To quote Seth Godin again, he once made the point that enough A/B testing will turn any website into a porn site. stating that because the short-term waves of data-driven algorithmic feedback loops inevitably make platforms banal and then trashy. As you can imagine, and maybe we need to be careful what we wish for here, kids. However good these shiny toys become, and they will be good, increasingly, what I think we're seeing is that to compete and stand out, we'll have to balance the wonderful efficiency gains that the technology brings us with showing the vulnerability, authenticity, and creativeness of our humanness. I think that's my point for this week. So that's a wrap on this short solo episode of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. I've been your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rockstar, but I'm managing partner at sales and marketing advisory firm Velocity B. And you can find me on LinkedIn, all my links, plus the links to all the things I referred to there in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com, or just search Rockstar CMO. I'm sure you'll find me. I'd love to hear from you. But most of all, thanks for putting your dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. I'm glad you're here. Coming up for us here on Rockstar CMO this week, we have Robert Rose back in the bar on Saturday, and Jeff and I will be chatting about marketing for a cause on Wednesday. So I hope you join us for some of that here on Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.